My fiancée's ex came back to town and it cracked our life open. And now she regrets everything when this happens. I, 28 million, used to think of an engagement as a runway. You get your momentum, you line up all the parts, venue, food, family, then you lift off and the lifetime starts. 6 months into our engagement, all our checklists were green. The guest list lived inside a spreadsheet with little color-coded notes that made my brain feel tidy. My grandmother's ring, the only thing she asked me to keep safe after she passed, was shining on Maya's 27F hand in every photo. We were steady in the quiet ways, splitting the grocery list without a fight, making tea for the other when one of us got the Sunday blues, arguing about paint colors like people who planned to stare at the same walls for decades. Our place wasn't fancy, but it had good bones. A second-floor walk-up above a bakery that started proofing dough at 4 a.m. and Zrenia filling the hallway with a warm yeasty smell that made the tile stairwell feel like a memory. On Fridays, Maya would bring home a paper bag with 2 croissants and say, "Let's call this dinner and be decadent." The bag would leave little butter stains on the counter. We had a citrus plant on the fire escape that never bore fruit but tried very hard, a dusty treadmill that doubled as a jacket rack, and a corkboard where we pinned venue brochures next to Polaroids from when our lungs hurt from laughing. We were real and kind and ordinary, which to me felt like proof against catastrophe. Then one Tuesday in late spring, while I was stirring a pot of red sauce and trying not to scorch the garlic, Maya walked into the kitchen with her phone pressed to her chest like a caught bird. "Jordan texted me," she said. Out of nowhere. I knew the name, the way you know the name of a town you always drive past. They dated for 3 years in college. It ended in some kind of imploding slow burn you don't really want to ask about because you don't want to start a chain reaction. I had one rule about exes. I'm not here to rewrite your past, but I am here to decide if your past is trying to write our future. What did he say? I asked, keeping my tone even, because burning garlic and jealousy smell the same and both are hard to wash out. He said he moved back for a job. He wants to apologize. For how he left things? For everything. Closure, basically. She stretched the word like it was taffy. He asked if we could grab coffee. I can say no. I stared at the steam rising from the pot. The sensible part of me, the part that color-coded our budget and knows how to reset the circuit breaker, said, trust her. The small dog-eared part of me that had seen people make brave dumb choices said, set a boundary you can live with. I told her coffee was okay with clear guardrails, public place, 1 hour, tell me how it goes. She nodded, came around the counter, kissed my cheek and said, God, you're decent. It felt like a compliment and a warning. They met at a cafe that looks like it was assembled from all the nice things people say about cafes. Big windows, forgiving lighting, soft jazz hum that you notice only when it stops. When she came back, it was like she had a second sun under her skin, brighter, jittery. She talked fast. How he'd apologized without hedging, how he was in therapy, how he'd bought a cheap bike and was very proud, how he still said whoa before speaking like he was getting permission from the air. She called it surprisingly healing. I told myself that was good. The alternative was bad. During the next 2 weeks, the story of our life started accumulating deleted scenes. Maya would say she was grabbing a quick coffee with a coworker. Later, a photo would go up on her friend's story with a wide crowd at a bar, and in a corner I'd spot a familiar profile with a bike helmet clipped to his backpack. She started taking her phone to the bathroom like it might run away. I'd come home and find her pacing the hallway, ending a call as she heard my keys. Venue call, she'd say, waving her phone, the screen dark. Except the venue's office hours were written on a brochure pinned to our corkboard and they did not involve 9:30 p.m. I asked how she felt about the whole thing. She said, weird so many times it stopped meaning anything. The air between us felt like the moment before you knock on a door you're not sure you should open. Friday night, we were at the table eating salad from a mixing bowl because I forgot the serving spoons, and she put her fork down like she was setting a cage gently on a counter. I'm confused, she said. I love you. I do. But when I saw him, it woke up something. Not necessarily about him. Maybe about a version of me I never finished being. I need space to think. Just a little. I want to protect us, which is why I'm saying this now and not later. I suggested counseling, not because I thought a stranger could wave a wand, but because a neutral room sometimes holds the truth cleaner than a kitchen can. She agreed too fast, like someone relieved to discover the emergency exit is clearly marked. Saturday she said she was going to a friend's art show. Sunday she told me she was sleeping at her sister's so they could make pancakes early. Sunday night the bed was cold on her side. Monday morning I woke up to the front door closing and Maya sitting on the edge of our bed, the daylight making her eyes look like glass marbles you could see through if you tried hard enough. She hesitated quite a while before she blurted out the words that started the avalanche of our breakup. "I slept with him," she said in the same voice you use when you admit you've dented a borrowed car. "I didn't plan it, we were talking. It was messy and then it wasn't and then it was. I'm so sorry." I asked one question because more would have been begging for details I didn't want. "Did he know you're engaged?" She covered her face with her hands and nodded. I've heard people describe heartbreak as shattering. Mine felt like the opposite. Everything went too quiet and too still, like a snowfall you can't hear until it stacks up to the windows. The world shrank to manageable tasks. Find the small velvet ring box, slide the ring out and back into its original bed, call the landlord, pack a bag, text my friend who once said, "If you ever need a couch, mine is made of clouds." I left. I put the key on the counter in the exact center of a tile because I wanted to leave one thing in our life perfectly lined up. I walked the 4 blocks to my friend's apartment. I don't remember the streetlights changing. I remember a dog on a stoop looking at me like I was passing a test. I slept on a couch with a lumpy cushion that felt honest. I woke up, got tested at a clinic that smelled like antiseptic and peppermint, and then sat by the river, watching a man in a red jacket teach a very dignified greyhound how to sit. It was the slowest day I've ever survived. I called every vendor on our spreadsheet and learned how heartbreak sounds in customer service voices. Soft, practiced, kind, a little bored in the way people get when they know the script. "Oh sweetheart, I'm so sorry. The deposit is non-refundable, but I can give you a partial credit if I ever what? If I ever climb back into that version of my life." I said thank you because decency is a habit, not a mood. I told both families. Her mother apologized to me in a voice as steady as a highway. Her father left me a voicemail that started with "Young people make mistakes" and ended with "Call me back so we can be men about this," which made me put my phone face down under a pillow like it might bite me. My mother mailed me a shoebox of old photos and a note that said, "Your future is bigger than this. Love, Mom." I will die on a hill defending the medicinal quality of a box of ugly childhood photos. I put my grandmother's ring in a safe deposit box because I didn't trust my grief not to throw it into the river just to watch the ripples. Then I went to therapy, because there's a limit to how much of your own mind you can carry alone. That was the day I ended my engagement and learned that a runway is still a runway even if the plane never takes off. You just turn around and walk back, very slowly, until you can catch another ride. Update 1. 1 week later. The weird thing about the first week after a life breaks is how the boring things still demand attention. You still have to put a plate in the sink, carry a box, find clean socks. You still have to answer emails that begin, "Following up on my previous email," with an attachment you forgot to open. Meanwhile, your heart is a fire alarm that never stops beeping even when you take the battery out and put it in your pocket. I moved into a sublet that smelled like other people's cooking. The bed frame was a futon that had many regrets. The shower took a minute to turn hot but then felt like forgiveness. My friend lent me a lamp that looked like a question mark, which was on the nose and therefore perfect. Maya asked to process together. She said therapy words like pebbles skipping across a pond, rupture, repair, attachment, story. I told her the only story we needed now was a list. Security deposit, movers, the storage unit code, which of the mugs was hers because we both loved the same chipped navy mug and there was only one. I told her to talk to me only about logistics for a while and to funnel everything else through her sister. She cried again. The kind of crying that sounds like a person trying to unlearn their own voice. She admitted the hookup happened twice, Saturday night and again Sunday morning, because apparently destruction takes breakfast. I kept notes like my lawyer told me to, even though there would be no lawyers. I kept notes because the page understood me better than a human would. Monday, returned ring. Wednesday, called florist, cancelled. Friday, bought new pillow because old one smelled like her shampoo. If our romance had been a document, the change tracking was ruthless and in red. That first Friday without her, I went back to the bakery under our old apartment building at 7 a.m. Out of habit. The woman behind the counter handed me 2 croissants, "For you and your wife." I said fiancé, and then ex, and then, never mind, all at once, and she did the kindness of pretending not to hear any of it. I ate both croissants on a park bench under a tree that was doing its best to be a tree. Butter greased the edges of the morning. I watched a runner stop, catch their breath, and lean their forehead against a lamppost the way you might lean your forehead against someone you love. People kept offering me narratives like they were holding out coats in a storm. She'll come to her senses. Once a cheater, always a cheater. It's not about you. It's entirely about you. I tried each one on. Some were warm, some itched. None fit for more than an hour. I found myself doing small, precise things as a way to keep from falling through the day. Organizing my spices alphabetically, cardamom will always feel like a friend now. Untangling a box of cables and labeling each one with tape. Old laptop, maybe dead? Deleting our shared playlist and building a new one that sounded like a new room getting painted. I walked in the evenings because nighttime had too much room for reruns. One night I sat on the river steps and watched the city light itself, one window at a time. The water packed up the last of the daylight and carried it downstream. A kid practiced kickflips and applauded himself when he landed one. I held onto that applause like a handrail. Before bed, I wrote down one rule in my phone notes that would become the spine of my next year. I will not negotiate with the version of you that betrayed me. I would later learn I wrote it for myself too. I will not negotiate with the part of me that thinks love means staying where I was set on fire. Update 2, 6 months later. Time did what time does. 8 whole weeks in single bites and left crumbs I could follow. I switched teams at work. Not because anyone asked me to, but because the coffee shop by the old office had the best muffins in the city and I didn't trust myself not to turn into a ghost who walked in there looking for a memory like it was on the menu. My new commute took me past a mural of a giant fish that looked like it was late to something important. I started saying hi to the fish. I started to feel less ridiculous about that. Therapy poured out the rot and left room. My therapist asked annoying, necessary questions like, what would it feel like to stop trying to be the most reasonable person in the room? And, if someone told you this story and it wasn't yours, what would you advise? I kept waiting to be told that I had failed by not keeping her, that I had failed by not knowing. Instead, I was told, you believed her until you couldn't. That's not a flaw. That's how love works. I cried until my ears felt empty. I went back to the ring, I took it out of hiding and set it on the desk like a small moon. It was my grandmother's ring, thin gold, no jewels, a thing designed to survive a life where a person takes a bus to a double shift and still comes home to dance in the kitchen. I decided not to sell it or throw it or lock it away forever. I decided to let it be what it had always been, a promise that outlived the people who made it. I put it in a safe with a note, for a different story. Through the world's ceaseless rumor mill, I heard that Maya and Jordan burned through 8 weeks of something that tried to pass itself off as love. It involved an overly ambitious camping trip and a fight in a grocery store about cereal. They ended like a dropped glass, loud, regrettable, nobody really sure who should pick up the first shard. I let the information float past me with the dignity of driftwood. I did not reach for it. I built a life you could mistake for boring. I joined a rec soccer team and was reliably the person who yelled, "Great try," even when the try was objectively not great. I became the guy who has the good band-aids in his backpack and the mini sunscreen. I slept through the night sometimes. I bought plants and kept them alive on purpose. I taught a young niece to make scrambled eggs with low heat and patience. I learned the proper order of operations for grief. Feel it, name it, feed yourself, take a walk. When the 6-month mark came, I marked it the way people mark summers on a doorframe. I took a stranger's photo in front of a sculpture because they asked nicely. I went home and didn't think about the old address once. That felt like proof that I had started to live in a new tense. Update 3. 2 years later. Here is what healing looked like for me. Quiet highways, the right podcast for a long drive, a clean kitchen on a Monday morning, a laundry basket that contained only exactly what needed to be washed, saying no thank you without apologizing, learning to be alone without being lonely, saying I love you to my friends on purpose, letting something good be small and still be good. Her name is Katrina. We met at a coworker's late cookout where half the conversations are always about who brought the better cooler. We both arrived late, she because her GPS tried to drown her on a dirt road, me because I had to circle back for the bag of charcoal I forgot on my porch. We carried the charcoal together across a lawn dotted with cornhole boards like benign sinkholes. The sky was a sheet of clean blue that made even terrible folding chairs look cinematic. Katrina is the kind of person who laughs before the punchline because she already loves that you're trying. She wears her hair up in a way that suggests it could also be down, and she makes space in conversations like she's pulling a chair out for you. We grilled badly and then ate happily anyway. She told me she teaches 8th grade science and that the kids were currently obsessed with a named class cockroach that refused to die. I told her I work with maps and roads for a living, which is handy when your heart has spent years getting lost. We didn't swap numbers that day. We ended up in the same group texts that form around seasonal rituals, pumpkin patches, outdoor movies, a winter soup exchange where someone always brings store-bought bread and calls it culinary solidarity. We drifted toward each other like people who'd learned to swim instead of being pulled by a current. On date 5, at a diner where the coffee is better than the flooring suggests, I told her the condensed version of the engagement. I did not make myself the hero. I did not make Maya the villain. I said I loved someone and she could not love me the way I needed, and then everything hurt until it didn't. Katrina listened in the way that makes silence feel like a person is holding your hand. Thank you for telling me now, she said. It matters who we've been. Months later, after we'd met each other's friends and learned which movie genres the other will never forgive, she, torture horror, me, the kind of comedy that's just humiliation wearing a hat. We went to her cousin's birthday in a brick house that smelled like lemon oil and roast chicken. The front stoop had a little metal sign that said, "Welcome, welcome, welcome," like it meant it 3 times. A woman opened the door whose face I recognized almost before I recognized why. It was the high cheekbones and the way her mouth set like putting something heavy on a shelf. I'd seen that combination at holidays once removed. My chest pressed a panic button I didn't know was wired to the doorbell. I looked at Katrina and she looked at me and we both understood. We stepped back onto the porch, and the music from inside thumped in polite apology for the awkwardness it could not fix. "So," she said. "I think this might be a weird surprise. I figured it out after our second date when you said your ex's name and a couple of family facts lined up. Maya is my cousin. Not once removed in Utah. Actual cousin. Sleepovers and summer cookouts and matching flower girl dresses once upon a time. I didn't tell you immediately because I didn't want to make your pain the headline of who you are. But it was going to come up eventually, and I'm sorry it came up with Aunt Lila's salmon dip." I stood there and listened to the neighborhood. A lawnmower a block over, wind in a dryer's plastic flag, a kid yelling Marco without the polo. Inside, someone laughed in a way that meant they were safe. "It's not a deal breaker," I said, slowly, because words are easier to trust when they go the speed of truth. "It's a boundary. We set rules. We go inside or we don't. Either way, we're okay." We did go in. We were adults about it in the rigorous way that takes practice. We hugged the aunt with the cheekbones, who turned out to be kind in the way of people who always know what to do with extra chairs. We helped an uncle fix a crooked canopy that was determined to shade the wrong part of the yard. I kept my hands busy, poured seltzer, sliced a lemon, guarded a plate of cookies from bored children with the seriousness of a security detail. We stayed an hour. We left with leftovers and a story we'd chosen to survive. Later, on her couch, Katrina texted Maya. "I'm dating Evan. We found out at Aunt Lila's. I want you to hear it from me, not from a cousin chain." The reply came back 10 minutes later. "I want him to be happy." Maybe it was sincere. Maybe it was performance. Either way, it didn't change the price of eggs. We made rules that would sound small to anyone who hasn't been burned but felt like engineering to us. No family gossip as entertainment. No triangulating through relatives. No comparisons, even in our heads. If a holiday put us in the same room as Maya, we'd say hello like civilized neighbors and then go pet whoever brought a dog. Our therapist, yes, we went together, because love is also maintenance, called these guardrails, which made me think of long highway drives at night and the comfort of heavy metal between you and the drop. One Saturday morning, 2 years and some months after the day I put the ring back in its box, I took it out of the safe. The gold looked like something that had learned how to glow without attention. I brought it to a jeweler named Mrs. Cha who wore a magnifying visor like a crown and treated metal like a language. We talked about resetting, not because I wanted to erase the past, but because I wanted a setting that fit the hand and the life I hoped to share. We chose a simple band with a small curve, a shape that recognizes that fingers move and fingers change. I did not propose that day. This is not that kind of miracle. Instead, I put the ring in my sock drawer behind a stack of winter socks and let it be good in waiting. I told myself that if the day came, it would come gently, without a dramatic scene change, the way mornings become afternoons if you're paying attention and if you're not. A few months after Aunt Lila's, there was a family picnic by the river. The city does this thing in late summer where the light turns the water into a forged thing, like pewter, like a promise. People threw frisbees that drifted into other conversations. Small dogs politely asked big dogs for advice. Children invented the rules of tag anew every 20 minutes. We were there, and so was Maya with an uncle who could fix anything with a piece of rope and one sigh. She and I said hello because we had planned to. The hello was simple, human. Her eyes were different in the way time changes a person's eyes, softer around the edges, a little more careful where they looked. We didn't discuss the past. The present was busy. Somebody's potato salad needed to be declared the winner, a toddler tried to drink from a sprinkler, a paper plate flipped and the wind applauded. When our brief conversation ended, we both turned to our necessary people. It felt like closing a book you can finally keep on the shelf. On the walk home, the path stitched through a stand of trees that make the city forget itself. We walked slow because we could. Katrina told me about a student who had written a love letter to photosynthesis. I told her about a map I was working on that would reroute a bus line to shave 5 minutes off a night nurse's ride home. We passed a bench with a plaque dedicated to Frank, who loved this view, and I said, "I hope Frank is right here every time someone sits." And she squeezed my hand and said, "He is now." That night, I thought about the kid with the sprinkler, the crooked canopy, the ring in the sock drawer, the croissants, the dog on the stoop who had once judged me and found me passing, the fish mural I still greet sometimes. I thought about my grandmother dancing in a kitchen after a double shift, and how promises are not about immunity to pain but about what you do when pain introduces itself. I am 30 now. The deposits we lost are whatever they were. Tuition in a class I didn't enroll in but still learned from. The version of me who believed love was momentum has retired. The one who believes love is daily practice shows up with a lunch pail and a pleasant willingness to sweep. I don't want fireworks. I want the hum of a well-tuned life, and a person next to me who knows where the spare batteries live. Her name is Katrina 31 Fahrenheit. When she laughs, the room picks a side and joins her. We are not in a rush and we are not lost. We are building a porch worth sitting on. And sometimes I catch myself looking at that ring while I'm folding socks and thinking, soon. Then I put it back and go find her in the kitchen, where the kettle is clicking and the world, finally, is ordinary again in the way that means it's good.